does social media work for you? How's that piece of the puzzle for your
It's so
business?
complicated because I
Yeah.
have such a love-hate relationship with it. Like I really do. I don't For me it's not all bad and all good, and it's like it really is a love-hate. I have days where I think, and right now I'm not getting sucked into like a compare despair vortex, which is like a real easy hole to fall down with social media. And I
Mm-hmm.
find myself doing it occasionally. I think sometimes I'm on there really looking more for like something that feels inspiring and something that feels innovative and something that like pops open a new creative idea for me in terms of content and things I want to play with. Um, you know, so man, it's really complicated. I think sometimes I feel like I notice that my energy is worse after I'm on social. Like I'm like, oh, I just opened this, or oh, I'm addicted. Like I'm not even in a question mark about it. I have an absolute addiction to social media. I don't think that I even utilize it as strategically for my business as I could, as much as I just am addicted to it. Um, I I have an anxious attachment to social media. And there's layers for me. Layer one is that I've been working as a solopreneur for 10 years. I don't report to an office. I don't have a community outside of myself that is physically in my real life. I mean, I have friends and a community, but in terms of the day to day, there's no water cooler. There's no like hang space. And for me, social media has become that. It's become like
Yeah.
the place where I get my connection fix. And so sometimes it satisfies it and sometimes it doesn't. I think sometimes
All right, I'm officially taking over our Slack channel to replace social media for you and just be like, okay, Jamie, here's what our topic is for today.
I'm here for it.
You're going to be in here, you and me and Polly and Dusty, we're all just going to be like, we need to get ourselves.
I'm here for it. Listen, I can't tell you after, so 2021, when I shut everything down, I really, for the first 4 months was like in this question mark around my relationship with social media because I was choosing to go on like a marketing diet. It was like an intentional, it wasn't about, oh, I don't want to work. It was like, I don't want to market. I don't want to market and sell. I want to re-examine my relationship with marketing and sales. I want to look at how the dopamine like rush for me around selling, around money, around revenue, around like what I'm getting out of marketing. I really wanted to have this moment of silence around all of those things so I could pay attention to the nuance of texture in myself of like, when do I feel myself getting hooked like it's addictive and like I don't have control over it versus when I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
space of like, oh, I'm just methodically doing the next thing. And so, it was like this intentional diet I was putting myself on to just be an exploration of what it feels like to then reintroduce some of those things. And
It really could feel like an elimination
yeah,
diet. Like I try to stay away from language around diet culture, but when you're saying reintroducing things
yeah,
to see how they feel, it can feel like, okay, my stomach's off, so I'm going to cut out gluten
yeah,
and dairy and soy and see how I feel, and then I'll slowly add them back in and
yep,
notice the reactions in my body. But instead of it being like I mean, it could be a gastrointestinal thing, but you're noticing that like polyvagal,
yep,
like fight or flight, adrenaline, cortisol, like what's happening with your dopamine, what's happening in your brain when you go back on these
mhm,
platforms. And I think you said something really interesting, which is like sometimes your energy shifts and you realize that after you come
yep,
off. And I think sometimes our energy shifts when we're on the platform, and sometimes we need, like, we go seek out those tools because we're feeling a certain way.
yep,
Maybe you feel lower, but it's partly because you were already low, and so you wanted social media to
yes,
be a stand-in for you in some way. You were looking for connection.
yes,
And so, like when I'm feeling lonely, I pick up my
yep,
phone and the first thing that I go to might be those channels because I'm feeling lonely. And if I don't feel that connection, I'm speaking to me now, I'm not trying to like put words in your mouth, but like if I don't feel some sort of connection after doing that, then I feel
mhm,
lower instead of feeling higher because my expectation was some sort of
mhm,
connection. Whereas if I'm just doing it as, well, I need to create something for my marketing and I need to engage in the DM, like that feels feels very different than what do I expect to get out of this tool.
Mhm. Yeah.